Good evening and welcome to the February 22nd, 2021 Board of Education meeting work session for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. This meeting is now called to order. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that the agenda of Monday, February 22nd, 2021 Board of Education meeting work session be approved as set forth, and that each item is considered ready for discussion and/or action.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
This is a roll call vote.
Director Garlock.
Aye.
Director Marshbrock.
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Vice President Tominski.
Aye. Before I turn it over to the superintendent for her report, I'd like to say a few words. We like to joke around that we aren't very competitive in Cedar Rapids, but back in November, when we heard that our superintendent was a finalist for the National Superintendent Award, we had a real sense of pride. And last week, when we heard that Noreen Bush won the Female Superintendent of the Year Award from AASA as part of their 2021 AASA Women in School Leadership Awards, well, I know I speak for the rest of the board when I say we were ecstatic. The criteria for this award evaluated candidates on leadership for learning, communication, professionalism, and community involvement. This board knew that there would be no finer candidate than Superintendent Bush, and we are thrilled that the AASA agrees. Congratulations, Superintendent. Well done. Much like we did during Rotary, I think everybody can take themselves off mute for just a hot second. If Laurel has allowed you to do that, let's give you a round of applause. That's well deserved.
Yay!
Yes.
All right, without further ado, we'll turn it over to Superintendent Bush for her report.
Well, I think you pretty much caught me. I was like a little off guard. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's my mic's going this way. And so I'm humbled and thank you very much. I said this in my remarks to the national conference, and just a huge shout out to the team and all their support, but specifically our communications department are just tremendous champions and have been so incredibly supportive through this process. I'll say that I have a hard time being in the spotlight a little bit. I'd much rather shine the light on all of you and our kids, but thank you to Colleen and her leadership and the team, Justin, Mark, and Ann, and all of their work. Just they helped support me through the process, so thanks to them. And so during my acceptance, I let the world know that we have the best school board, and that because you believe in kids, you believe in public education, and you support administrators and teachers to do their work. So thank you to the board. And I do think that I am just a reflection of a great team. So this is the team. Thank you all very much. And so humbled. But so without any further ado, let's shine the light on others, shall we? Because I get a little nervous, I guess, yeah, never mind. I don't have to say anything else. So I will share my screen now with the superintendent's report here. Just one second. Sorry about that. All right. Okay, I think we're good now. All right, so a few highlights. I'm going to keep it pretty short because we have some fun things to share in our learning session tonight. But just a couple of reminders. Again, we have preschool and kindergarten registration open. Also, open enrollment is open for Cedar Rapids. And just another highlight of our virtual academy is available for those seeking a remote option for their students. And that's both for students within our district as well as students who perhaps won't have that opportunity and their own districts next year. And we certainly want to support families who are seeking that option in the future. The Virtual Academy will be a K-12 academy next year. And we'll continue our work there. So very proud of that continued work, but also 'tis the season, of course, for preschool and kindergarten. In addition, the vaccinations for our staff, just a huge shout out again to our nursing staff who has now distributed over 1,400 vaccinations. And including, actually it's 1,500 as of Friday, because they also did second vaccinations to the nursing staff that qualified for that second round. We will be finishing up vaccinations for secondary buildings, as well as some of our specialized departments this week, which means we will be accelerating our vaccination process sooner than we thought. And we are very grateful that we can provide that vaccination clinic in our district. And then finally, a huge administrative announcement. This has been all over social media. It has certainly been in the Washington community, but here's his shining face. Congratulations to Darius Ballard being named the high school principal at Washington High School. Darius brought in 5 years of experience there on the east side. And prior to that, was an educational leader and teacher at Jefferson High School, committed to our district, certainly has brought a lot to Washington High School. We're so proud of him, and congratulations to him, and looking forward to the future work over at Washington. We're going to reserve the rest of the celebrations for our presentations tonight, but thanks again so much, board. And now I'll hand it back over to you, Vice President Tominski.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that report. Do we have any board reports?
I do have something to share. So this month I went to there was a National School Board Association and Equity Symposium, which I attended. There was a lot of great information there that is now available for free. The video is available for free on the NSBA site. I also purchased this book, Seat at the Table, School Board Members' Perspectives on Race and Racism. And anyone is welcome to borrow it from me when I am finished. Also attended 3 IASB webinars, Priorities in Primetime Series, focusing on COVID, preschool, and mental health. Those are all available on the IASB site as well for anyone to review on the school board. And additionally, I've started school visits. I've asked the principals at each school to provide one paragraph on how their school is carrying out our mission as it relates to our strategic plan. So from Gary Hatfield at Taft, he said, at Taft Middle School, we begin each day with caring school communities where students share their ideas and learn collaboratively about the importance of their place in our school community. Throughout the year, students are recognized for their contributions around the school through positive referrals and PART, positive behavior, active listening, respect, responsibility, and trustworthy students of the month. Notification of the students' contributions are sent home and shared throughout the school so the school and family can celebrate their accomplishments. We were also recently able to celebrate the conclusion of the first semester by offering hot chocolate during advisory time to all students through our partnership with Hy-Vee on Johnson Avenue. So that's an example of how they're delivering on family engagement and school improvement plan, again, under the focus of culture. Denise Pape at Viola Gibson is excited about the growth they had under the focus of workforce and also the focus of student learning. Denise writes, one that stood out amongst the rest was the work that we have done to truly become a professional learning community. We have grade level teams working closely together and have made the commitments to one another to be responsible for all of our kids and not just those in our own classroom. They are closely monitoring their students and really diving into instructional strategies that are making a difference. So that would be delivering on the school improvement plan, employee relations, and the art and science of teaching. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Other board reports?
Yeah, I also have a legislative report. Just to give you all a sense of scope, the update that we got last Friday from UEN, I counted them up and contained about 25 bills in the legislature that have some association with education. So there's a lot going on. I'm not going to put you all through the time it would take to go through all of them, but I do want to give you the highlights. And some of this we've been updated on, but just so the community is aware, school funding is probably the biggest issue for all of us, and that has been determined. Our school funding increase for next year will be 2.4%. That has passed both the Senate and the House, waiting for the governor's signature. That is well below what we need to maintain the programs that we currently have in place. And in fact, at 2.4%, there will be 137 districts in the state who are on something called the budget guarantee, which means any gap in funding from last year will need to be made up from property tax. So while the state has emergency funds, rainy day funds, we have a budget surplus, it looks like property tax will be impacted by the decision that they made to give us only 2.4%. So that will continue to be a concern for us, I think, as a board, as we move through the next few months. Associated with that, there also is a cut to preschool of $7 million across the state. And it seems like that may have been an unintended consequence of the school funding bill. There was an amendment added to a bill to fix that. The amendment was defeated. So preschool funding is still sort of hanging out there in the balance. We hope that another bill will come to the legislature to take care of that. Also still hanging out there in the balance is the supplemental funding. There's about $27 million that the legislature is intending to go to schools for help with COVID response. There's been a lot of back and forth. There's been some controversy about all the versions of that. It appears that right now, the proposal that's moving forward is that how much money each district gets will be based on the number of days that we've spent in full-time in-person instruction. The one change that is helpful to us here in Cedar Rapids is that the derecho days when we were forced to do virtual learning, we will not be penalized for those in the bill as it stands now. That bill is not passed. It's out of the House committee, but not any further than that. So that's funding. The voucher bill was part of a very large omnibus education bill. That omnibus bill appears to be stalled out, but we're fully expecting the different pieces of that large bill to be presented individually. So while for now, vouchers are not going anywhere, that doesn't mean that they won't. So we need to continue to advocate against any form of voucher plan. And just to point out to everyone, especially those of you in the public, we will be acting tonight on a board resolution in opposition to vouchers, scholarship funds, education savings accounts, whatever name they're given. But any plan that takes public money away from public schools will be, as a board, voting to oppose any such plan. There are a number of other bills, the school related. There's one that has to do with ELL weighting and funding, which I think is very important for us. So we'll keep an eye on that. There are some curriculum bills, and as a board, we have always promoted local control. There are a couple bills that would put curriculum decisions in the hands of our state legislators, and I believe personally that is a very dangerous way to be moving. One of those is the use of the 1619 project, which is an important historical perspective of Black America and the history of Black America. Another one is a gender identity education bill that would remove gender identity education from high schools and would require parent permission in the lower grades. So both of those are curriculum related. I think as a board, it's important for us to know that our teachers are the best people to make those decisions, not our legislators. So those are the ones we're keeping track of. I appreciate all of the help that some of you have given individually. I know some of you have been contacting legislators on a regular basis, and that's what it takes for them to hear us and to take our words to heart. I'd be happy to answer any questions if any of the board members have any.
I appreciate all the work that you've done on this. Your advocacy is important. Our voice really matters. There's a lot of stuff that was going on in the legislative session, a lot of stuff to keep track of. So I do appreciate you and others just staying on top of that stuff and keeping us informed. Are there other board reports? So quick, I'll just give you a report from me. On a brighter note, like there was about a month ago, Bridget Castelluccio, was a fourth grade teacher. She came to our board meeting and she was talking about what was happening in her virtual classroom, and she invited all of us to come and share some time with her. I was excited to take her up on that opportunity, so I was joined her classroom. It was a ton of fun. I got to share my leadership story because they were interested, and they asked me a ton of questions. So I don't know if anybody else has been in that classroom, but they are one of the most engaged groups of young people, and I was just thrilled to have that opportunity. Nicole Quaker, I believe that you were also there because you and I both got the same thank you letters. So in my inbox, it seemed like maybe about a week later, we got all kinds of really colorful thank yous, and I saw your name on there as well. So that was pretty cool. And I did talk to Nancy earlier today, and it sounds like she had the opportunity to visit the classroom too. So always great when we can spend some time in the classroom, and I was just thrilled to get the invitation. And those kids are just amazing. Quick update on our board vacancy. Last Monday, we did have a special board meeting to vote on how to fill the vacancy. And we voted to fill it by appointment rather than special election. We accepted letters of interest from the community, which were due yesterday. Board members are reviewing these letters of interest, and we will plan to make an appointment at a special board meeting that is tentatively scheduled for Friday at noon. So just an update on that. Moving on to communications, delegations, and petitions. Board Secretary Day, do we have any speakers registered to address the board this evening?
Yes, we do. We have 3 people who have pre-registered.
Okay. Before we hear from those who have requested to address the board, I'd like to remind you to please state your name and address for the record when called. You will be given up to 5 minutes for your remarks. Board Secretary Day will serve as your timer and inform you when your time is up. Additionally, in order to abide by the open meetings law, I'd like to remind our speakers that there is no dialogue between board members and the public during this time, except to clarify the nature of questions or comments from the individual speaking. Laurel, will you call our first speaker?
Yes, tonight's first speaker is Lawrence Winklowski. Lawrence, I think you're on. If you'd like to go ahead, I'll start your 5 minutes.
Yeah, hi, Lawrence Winklowski, 4234 Morel Road, Northeast Cedar Rapids, Iowa. First thing I want to say is I do want to congratulate Noreen again, and thank you for bringing this honor to our district. And and you were right when you said it's you couldn't have done it without others, Annette. And a true leader listens to other people, Annette, and they're not dictators, and that's what you are. Second thing is my notes here. It had to do with school funding. There's something that we have in our tax system that I think is a perfect thing that we should get rid of that could potentially give us more money. And that's the tuition and textbook credit. And the reason I say that is like a lot of people don't know about it and don't take advantage of it. It's sort of set up that if you can use busing as one of your deductions for this credit, but only if you write it to the school. So if you write it to the school district, you can't do it. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. There's just a lot of problems with this bill or this tax credit. And at a minimum, they should do is clean the thing up to get us some more money. And that personally, I'd like to see us get rid of it. And that, if you want to give people credits for the supplies, give the school districts the money so they can actually buy the supplies, and then the parents don't have to worry about it. Okay, last thing is has to do with, I was really sorry to hear about Director Anhalt, and with coming forward with the board selecting a new person, I truly hope no one in the community gets some crazy idea to pass a petition so we have to have a special election. For a couple reasons I say this. One is we get so much other more important things going on in our school district with COVID, and that also there's a big cost involved in this. We don't have the extra money just sitting around for people to do this. Another thing is with the board selecting whoever they select, I truly hope it is not somebody who is going to run for school board come November. And I hemmed and hawed about this, but it probably makes sense not to have someone who was on the school board previously, and that or people who represent, have alternative agendas, and that, but or secondary agendas, I guess you'd call it. So anyway, that's just sort of my personal feedback on that. So that's all I wanted to touch base on, were those particular items and that, and so anyway, that's it, and everyone have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Winkowski. Next on our agenda this evening is Mary Arenas, who has also registered. Mary, are you with us? Mary, I think you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I meant Mary. Mary, are you with us? I think while we're waiting for Mary to join us, why don't we go ahead with our last speaker for this evening, which would be Tanya Johnson.
Hi, my name is Tanya Johnson, and I live at 3816 Riverside Drive, Northeast. I am speaking as the Cedar Rapids Education Association president this evening. At our February meeting, which we have all of our association reps at, we had a very long discussion about the equity during this pandemic and during throughout virtual learning. Many folks on our meeting talked about their classrooms either virtually or in person, and I think most of the concerns came from the virtual learners, and just making sure that those learners were getting what they needed. Large concerns came from the special ed community and those special ed students who may have not had access in the beginning or were able to get their minutes. And then other concerns came from our Black and brown kids who maybe are living in homes where they're not able to get the internet or to get the information that they needed in order to make things happen. So that came up. We were going to have some speakers speak at the last board meeting, and that got changed. But hopefully those speakers will come back in our next board meeting in March to give you some specific details of those concerns. And just remembering throughout this entire thing, we know that our teachers, whether they're in person or virtual, are doing everything they can because they know that this is tough for our students, tough for the teachers, and we don't want them to fall behind. It's just such a different experience than anyone has ever had before. So just continuing to keep that in the forefront and doing everything that we can to help with that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is I was able to be a part of an awesome thing that happened last week. It was the second Career in Education Day. Tara Treister from our district helps with the Workplace Learning Connection to put this on. And there were, I think, 30 students from 14 different school districts. Noreen was on the call and tried to talk them all into coming and working in Cedar Rapids, which I think is probably a good idea. But they got to hear several different people employees from the Cedar Rapids School District talk about their jobs in education, not just teachers, but also data analysts and special ed and counselors and just lots of different perspectives of what we do in education in Cedar Rapids schools. And I know we're going to be hoping to do something a little bit more to get more of our students, Cedar Rapids students, involved in that. Lastly, I want to share some awesome news about a paraeducator in our district, Paige Barber, who is a para at Taft Middle School. She was voted as the ISEA Education Support Professional of the Year. Some words describing Paige, in case you haven't met her before. She supports her peers, and this is some support from her peers and her principal who nominated her for this honor. She's capable
And yes, it looks like we are back.
Great, thank you. Vice President Tominski, I would recommend that we proceed with our agenda, and then we'll see if Mary is able to join us hopefully at some point yet this evening.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to all of our speakers this evening. It's always wonderful to hear from the community, and taking advantage of this opportunity is a wonderful way to do that. We will now move on to our consent agenda. Are there any items that a board member would like to pull for a comment, question, or separate vote? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Who said that? Who made the motion? Fortunate. Very good. Thank you.
Perfect. Is there any further discussion? This is a roll call vote.
Was there a second? I didn't catch that.
If not, I'll second.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah.
I thought I heard Cindy and Borcherding, but there's also like 50 people on my screen right now, so I apologize if this is such an important job. I'm looking forward to President Humbles being back with us. Sorry if I missed anything else. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Director Merschbrock.
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Director Garlock.
Aye.
Vice President Tominski.
Aye.
All right, I think we can continue moving on here. I don't think Mary's able to join us yet.
Okay. Next, we will hear from Superintendent Bush regarding the pandemic and return to learn plans.
Thank you very much, Vice President Tyminski. So here we are in late February. We are approaching March. Spring break is a couple of weeks away. And this is the time of year where we're kind of living in 2 years. Every year, this is this time of year. So we're really trying to hone in on how we're providing supports from now until the end of the year. And at the same time, we start looking at plans for next year. So lots of questions have surfaced from families regarding next year. I mentioned the virtual academy during superintendent report tonight. So we've provided options for our families all year this year. And so some of them are already starting to question, what about next year? Remote is an option for families next year. And if they choose that as an option, it would be through our virtual academy. And that would be their school. And certainly we would provide supports for our families. Our teachers are these selected teachers for the virtual academy. So that is a continued option. And then also we've surfaced some questions from families around what vaccinations might mean from a student perspective. And so at this point in time, just for clarity, vaccinations are really targeted to adults at this point in time. And for us, that is our employee group. And so as we're able to scale that and ensure that our adults are vaccinated, we will be following CDC, and certainly the American Pediatrics Association will have recommendations for children as we move forward. But at this point in time, that is not on a list of criteria for entrance into school next year for children. However, we will continue to follow CDC guidelines and public health guidelines and keep our families informed. So there's just been a few questions that surfaced as vaccinations came to surface for employees. Families were asking that same question. So we are continuing to serve our families through choice of in-person instruction and remote instruction. And just hats off to all of our educators and employees and families for riding along with us through this year. But as you all have said over and over again, just so proud of our district and everybody pulling together to do the very best that we can for our kids.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions from board members? I think I speak for us when I say that I do appreciate all the work that has been put into this. There are a lot of options, it seems, and they're not easy decisions to make, but I trust you guys to make the decisions that keep our students and staff safe. So I do appreciate that.
David, I do believe that Mary is now with us.
Mary has joined. Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. Mary, if you will unmute yourself here. And whenever you're ready, please proceed, Mary.
Okay, is it ready to go? Can you hear me and see me?
We sure can.
Okay, I just think that policy changes need to be made, and this is why. In every Cedar Rapids school, nearly every classroom, we have children who have been through trauma and find it hard to regulate. It says done speaking, but I'm not. Is it okay?
Sure, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Fine.
It can be even the trauma of being born too quickly. It shows an outburst of not listening to the teacher, eloping, slamming doors, throwing chairs, sucking other peers in the stomach, and throwing markers, just so many things, yelling they don't want to do any more work. Let's see, or even going to the hallway for safety when it gets really tough. It's not fair. And how are these students to get their fundamentals day after day of these interruptions? There is approximately 480 children in Cedar Rapids School District alone that are in family foster care who have endured horrible traumas, and they are affected with a lot of them with PTSD. There are more children in foster care with PTSD than all the veterans in our wars combined, and you can look that up. So with that, the child that I adopted has anxiety and PTSD. Most people can understand anxiety, however, not PTSD. PTSD affects people differently. And when she was in the classroom, she was always in the fight, flight, or freeze mode, just waiting for something to happen. And using that lower brain, she couldn't really do a lot of learning. She was in this classroom too long for 6 months. Do we ask our vets? I know you can't handle the fireworks this year, but go ahead and go anyway. And if you throw up, we'll just give you a different change of clothes and go back to the fireworks or go back to classroom that my daughter had to go to. If it gets too much for you, you can have a break card and you can have a break, or tell the veterans you can have a break from the fireworks. Or when they're mowing the lawn, oh, if you hear a car backfire, don't throw yourself on the ground thinking it's a gunshot. No, it's PTSD. I think our staff need to be educated on PTSD, because I don't feel that the principal or the head of the elementary schools would have kept asking my daughter to go back if they truly would have understood it. And I have a place called National Children Trauma Stress Network, and a phone number out of Maryland, 240-276-1310. I just think that education needs to be done for the PTSD, especially for the kids from the derecho or the epidemic that we're in now. But even before that, there was a lot of stuff going on. I have contacted my congressman, Art State, and I said, please tell my story a million times of what's going on in the schools. We need to get monies so we can have separate classrooms for mental health for these kids, so then they can come back into the classroom when they are doing better. But it takes a long time to get those pathways rerouted. And so I got a hold of the NAACP, the governor's office, and the Department of Education. The school put in a 504 for her anxiety, and she got moved to the new classroom because I said she can't take it anymore. She didn't want to go to school. Like I said, she was vomiting before school, vomiting at school, begged me not to take her, begged me to pick her up early, just didn't want to go to school. And this is a girl who is like in the top 3 in her class. And she's of African-American descent. I think we need to really look at this and make some changes. I just can't imagine going to work with that happening. Why would they have to go through this? I just think we need to have some changes made for the kids that have the meltdowns. She is in a new classroom. It takes 1 to 3 days for a student to start a new classroom. When I did foster care for 20 years, we started the next day. So I don't understand why. I was told the teacher was very organized, and
Your time is up, Mary.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. I'm glad you
Yes.
connected with us.
Yes.
Mary, thanks for your comments.
Yeah.
Next on our agenda is a proposed resolution for opposing Senate File 159. Directors Borcherding and Garlock have been instrumental in bringing this resolution to our attention. So I'll turn it over to them for any brief comments or questions from board members.
This is, as I mentioned in my comments earlier, this is a resolution opposing any form of voucher, educational savings account, scholarship fund that would take public dollars away from public schools. It's a resolution that has been passed by a number of school districts in the state. We are simply trying to relay a message to our representatives in the state legislature, the importance of keeping public money in serving public entities. So Jennifer and I are just asking the board to approve this resolution, showing our solidarity in our belief that public money is for public schools. And Jennifer, if you have any comments or if anyone has questions.
The only thing that I would add to that is that I've received feedback through the process that Director Garlock and I have been going through when we've been lobbying on this issue, is that this particular piece of legislation seems to be generating the highest volume of communication. And I think that's important to note. This is an issue that's going to affect everyone in the state. If it passes, it'll take public money and put it to private use. But there will be districts that won't have any, they will be losing designated money to put into private use, but they will have no way to be taking advantage of that entitlement program, which is basically what this is. It's an entitlement program. So I think, again, it's important to know that there are majority of the state, I think, is opposed to this. And I think it would add strength to us as a governing body to make a formal position here.
I think it's another thing that's important for the public to understand too, is that public schools have very high accountability and transparency expectations. And we just simply cannot say the same thing for private schools. Some of them choose to have that transparency and accountability, but there is no requirement. So this really does create a very unlevel playing field. But I think our largest objection here is just, our tax dollars are very precious. And as we spoke of earlier, 2.4% is not going to be enough to support all of our programs. So taking even more money away from public education is catastrophic.
Are there any questions from board members? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is simply informational. We'd like to let the public know that the board will hold an exempt session at the conclusion of tonight's meeting to discuss strategy sessions for union and non-union employee groups as allowed by the Code of Iowa. We will now move on to our work session. Superintendent Bush, we are looking forward to hearing an update regarding the district's anti-racism initiatives. Please take it away.
Thank you so much. And we sure do appreciate the opportunity to provide an update on the presentation that we actually brought to the board at the end of the summer already. It just seems like it was not that long ago. So last summer, so proud of our students who elevated the voice of our district and considering what are we all about in Cedar Rapids in regards to equity and specifically anti-racism. And so if I could just get a thumbs up that you can see the presentation. No, I'm going to make sure that you can see the presentation. So that will be important.
Yeah, we were able to see it, but then it disappeared, Noreen.
Then it disappeared. Okay, let's make sure it's there. Can I thank you very much? Excellent. So who better to report on where we are than the folks who are doing the work? So we have several members of our community here tonight to talk about the initiatives. Just as a reminder, we have a page dedicated on our website to this work and what we have elevated as a school district. So just as a reminder, last summer we did hold some town hall meetings and several themes surfaced from those town hall meetings. They were virtual, of course, because of the pandemic, but students participated, community members participated, staff members participated, and some things that folks really wanted to address were surfaced. And so we grounded ourselves in our equity belief statement which is part of our strategic planning work. And that statement is here on the screen. And looking at that ground of what we truly believe in equity, specifically targeting our students, how were we going to continue to elevate the voices of everyone within our school district? So the themes that surfaced and that we are going to update on tonight are student voice, professional development, teaching and learning, specifically curriculum and instruction work there, teaching and learning, staffing and diversifying our workforce, and then our community and parent support as the work continues. So this is just a quick bullet note list. I'm not going to talk through all of these items, but these were some bullet notes that were surfaced and came to surface through the work. So just wanted the board to know, and the green highlights are the things that are off and running, and the yellow are things that we've started and they're not quite to the green zone yet. I would have added red to anything that hasn't been started, but everything we've started somewhere. So that is good news. And some things have gotten more legs than others, but we are after the work. So just to start, I'm so excited to invite some student voices to the presentation tonight. So we have Nakasa and Zabajo with us tonight, who are going to tell us a little bit about our Black Student Union work and what their experiences have been so far as our representatives of the Black Student Unions tonight. So Nakasa, I would ask that you get us started, and then we'll hand the mic over to Zabajo.
Do I have a time limit? Because I don't want to like overstep.
Yep, so couple minutes, like 2 minutes. Yep, you got it.
So hi, I'm Nakasa, senior at Jefferson High School. First off, congratulations, Ms. Bush, for your national award. That is quite an achievement. And also special thanks to Ms. Schaller for writing an article for our BSU. Mrs. Harrington, she's been an amazing asset for all of the BSUs, an amazing mentor to me. And Mr. Schaefer as well for filming us. It's been an honor to even be speaking to you guys here. It's an honor. As for our BSUs, planning for our cookout last semester was an amazing achievement, and I'm just so proud of the work that we've accomplished with it. Meeting people, seeing who's interested, and looking just around the crowd and seeing our allies, possible new members. It was amazing to have, and we have continued to see those people who have came at the cookout approach us and join us in our BSUs. So it's just been amazing to have that experience with them. And in my own school, Black History Month has never been something that was hyped up in the years that I've been a student at Jefferson High School. But this year, we really stepped up our game. There are daily Black History announcements, not just with African American history, but with all history concerning Black people. We also have had a door challenge with many teachers participating and putting articles of Black history or anything to commemorate the month on their door. And I've yet to see it, but I know from what I've heard, it's an amazing thing that they're doing. Also, we did an all-school, all-BSU collab, and we are yet to see the video. The video is coming out this Wednesday, so I'm really excited to see what that's like. We spent a lot of time collaborating on it, planning, and we were finally able to execute it. And I'm just very excited and very happy that the school district has been able to support us and really just putting their necks out for us. I'm really proud of that. I'm also looking forward to our future events that the BSUs are planning to do, that we're individual. Each of our school has our own goals. But as for Jefferson right now, it was brought up earlier, the 1619 project and the legislation that's going to affect the funding for the schools. So that's something that we will be discussing, and hopefully we'll be able to put something forth into action to combat the state legislature, because the 1619 project is first off was made by a Black woman from Waterloo, Iowa, and it'd just be a disgrace and a dishonor to not at least try to fight for the work that she put in to really highlight the legacy of slavery within America. And that it's a part of the reason why we even have Black student unions, for students to really fight for things that matter to us. And this is something that cannot be hidden. So I would like to thank you all again for listening to us. And without further ado, Zabho, take it away.
Okay. I would not add, I'll add more things to what she just said, but everything she just said reflects the same thing. First of all, my name is Subaho Uraneza. I go to Washington High School. I'm a freshman. And everything she just said reflects that I had the same experience within the Black Union. I went to Harding Middle School and we didn't do so much of Black History Month there. But as I got to Washington High School, I was able to be engaged in the Black History Month and the BSU. And it has been really, really fun to get people from allies, and we have Black students and we from different schools, and we got to work on a project that she just mentioned that will be coming out on Wednesday. So that was really fun to work on and for students to put out their voices. Another thing that I'm involved in is the Superintendent's Advisory, which was launched a few months ago, and we just had our first meeting on January the 29th. That meeting was extremely very powerful and fun to have. We had a lot of students from Kennedy, Washington, Jefferson, and the students are really want to work, and they put in a lot of voices and they shared some opinions that I would like to share with the board. Some students had the opinion that they want more counselors involved in school and more psychologists than school officers, and they want students of English language learner program to be elevated, because sometimes they're just put out there and they're expected to know how to do everything, how the schools work, how to sign up for different events. So we would like the district to really work with those students and help them. And some students even mentioned that they would like to help, because it's something that they like to teach these students how the American culture, and also get to know them and their different countries that they come from, their culture, and etc. Another was cultivating connection between administrators, that's at the district level or in schools. Students really want to have connections with the people who run the schools. Usually as students, we have opinions, but most of the times they don't get heard because some students are scared to share them, or they don't know who to talk to. So that we would like the district to work on that. And another opinion that was set out was hiring staff of color to represent other students, and that's something I know that Miss Latoya is working on. And there are a lot of roadblocks, but I think we will get it, because it's very important to have teachers of color, since we have students from all backgrounds, and it will be very important to have those teachers also educating those students. Another plan that it's for the curriculum, and I know that we're talking about that the 1619 project is very important, and it's it will be very useful to have in our schools, because it has some fundamentals history that we are not taught in our classes. And that's another thing that students mentioned, the Student Advisory Council, that they would like to have a curriculum that reflects them, and that is rigorous and represents the African opinion, indigenous, brown people, and all other melanated people in our school districts. And a quote that I would like to share with us will be from Malcolm X. It says, "The future belongs to those who prepare for it today." So that's a quote that I would like us to move on forward with, working all of these plans that the students have put out, and really have put students in the decision making, because ultimately the decision come to us and we have to follow to them. So it'd be very important for us to also work and give feedback to those plans. And that is it for me.
Subaho Nakasa, thank you for representing your peers and our entire district of students tonight. couldn't be more proud of our kids, and you two have, thank you for representing the team tonight. So much appreciate that. And I would completely agree with your sentiments, Zabaho, that the first superintendent meeting, I'll just say this, if I could schedule that every day, all day, that would be where Superintendent Bush would like to spend her time, because they have fantastic ideas. And we're in the process of trying to implement what the next steps will be for that launch of that team. So thank you to our students. Board members, I just remind you, certainly questions can be asked at the end of the presentation, certainly from our students and their perspective. Just a high note on professional development. You know that we've implemented what's called the intercultural developmental mindset. We do acronym things. It's the IDI assessment that we take as a school district. 13 schools have now been through that process, our entire executive council. And then also we've launched that into our HR and payroll department. And then looking to expand that within our other operational departments as we expand into the rest of our schools. Our focus, of course, continues to be on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And just some bullet notes of those continued practices. I would say the thing that I really appreciate about our high reliability schools framework, or the HRS framework, is that it really is a school support plan. The district provides resources, but the schools are really digging into their data and then looking at the professional development and the focuses that they would like to bring as a school in regards to their practices of creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment. Remember, HRS level 1 is safe, supportive, collaborative environments. And so how does that live through an anti-racism lens and through an equity lens, through a diversity lens and an inclusive lens? So that work continues with each one of our schools. And so now I'd like to turn it over to John Rice and Beth Davies, who are going to give you a high-level view of what's happening in teaching and learning. And Beth's going to take us a little deeper dive into a content area of how we're looking at curriculum, specifically with an anti-racism lens. John, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Bush. So at a high level, we've started with our English language arts and our social studies texts. That's the best opportunity and the easiest access point to change our curriculum to be more responsive and more inclusive of different viewpoints. And the mantra we're going with is windows and mirrors. And I think that's a helpful way for us to think about it and explain it. We want our curriculum and our materials to be windows into lots of different viewpoints, lots of perspectives, as Superintendent Bush just mentioned. But also, as our student voice shared, our curriculum should also be mirrors so that students see themselves reflected in all of our materials as well. So all of our students should see other people like themselves in what we're reading, what we're studying, what we're learning about, the perspectives we consider. And again, English language arts and social studies are really the best access points. But we've also expanded into AP this year as well, looking for opportunities where the AP curriculum, largely that we get from the College Board, can be supplemented as well. So one of our teachers has added in content from Henrietta Lacks and how her stem cells had a big impact on scientific research that wasn't already part of that course. So lots of work to be done there and conversations to be had, but that's the beginning entry point. So I'll give it over to Beth.
Okay, thank you, John. My name is Beth Davies. I am the K-12 music content lead here in Cedar Rapids. I've been in this position, I think this is my 7th or 8th year. So I just want to thank you so much for giving me a moment here to discuss with you some of the work we are doing with anti-racism in our music curriculum. And I see Superintendent Bush put my little slide deck up here. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I'm just going to kind of start out with you. This slide deck is the beginnings of a professional development that I'm planning with our music teachers that digs into anti-racism in our music curriculum. And I would just like to point out, music is unique. It's not completely unique because this could apply to other subject areas also, but in music, we don't always perform the exact same songs every single year. It's up to teacher discretion to choose that music a lot of the time. So this, I feel like for music, our anti-racism work needs to go beyond just the written curriculum, and really needs to be kind of a mindset shift for all of our music teachers as they choose material to work on with their students. So, and the same could be said for our ELA teachers choosing novels and things like that. But so that's kind of what this professional development is about. So I kind of broke it down into like a process. So moving towards that cultural competency, determining what we need to look at, researching those songs. And I put that one at the forefront before we dive into our own, because just having a background in what is racist music is important before we begin looking at our own materials. Evaluating our materials and then seeking new material for representation. Music is a predominantly white male field. And if you look at the music that a lot of us play with our students or perform with our students, that is often what is reflected. So seeking out some new composers, arrangers, all of that kind of stuff is going to be really important so that we can do exactly what John was talking about with mirrors for our children. So thank you. So determining the music, this I just kind of show what are things, there are kind of two different kinds of curriculum we use. The stuff that we use every single day from year to year, some of those method books. And then the second piece is that performance music, where our music teachers really have a lot of autonomy to choose different things there. Thank you. We can move on to that next one. Here, the research, this, I found some just excellent resources on how to identify that music that should be removed from our curriculum. So I found, I was able to find some complete lists, and there's a really neat site. It's an organization called Decolonizing the Music Room, and they have a lot of great resources. They have a blog, they have all sorts of different articles. It's just a great resource for our teachers. And this next slide is the one where I kind of want to dig in here. So the evaluation piece, this is where we've done quite a bit of work. So our primary elementary school curriculum, luckily, did a lot of this work for us. They released an official statement on cultural sensitivity where they outlined exactly the songs that should be removed from our curriculum and replaced them with other options to still be able to work on those same standards. So that was a huge help. My elementary curriculum team, who is a bunch of rock stars, Sarah Jones from Kenwood, put together a really detailed media inventory tool for assessing the music that we're presenting to students. So we're kind of taking our music through that inventory tool. And then for the middle school band method books, that I did complete. I teach middle school band. I'm a full-time band director at Franklin. So I started with that because that's what I know. And I mean, as you would expect, we found right away songs that absolutely should not be put in front of our Black and brown children. So those songs, I kind of went through, and if you want to open that one up just to give a little peek at that. So I kind of went through, we looked at the title, looked at the composer, looked at the lyrics. Lyrics especially is where we run into discovering racist roots of these songs. And it's really important for us as teachers to know that if I'm playing a song with my students, it is one Google search away from them finding the dark history of some of that music. And I just can't even stomach the idea of one of my Black and brown children Googling a song like that and reading the original lyrics of that song. So these are the songs that we found that need to be removed from our curriculum and replaced with something else. So I went through every method book, all of, solo and ensemble music that we used. And then for all of our music teachers, if you want to click on that last one, the checklist for selecting culturally competent performance music, this is where, this is where we need to talk about that mindset shift. And we need all of our teachers, when they're selecting repertoire, to kind of go through this mental checklist. The title. I mean, I have some music in our library that it uses language mockery for the title. And it tends to be with some of those Latin pieces of music. I don't want one of my Mexican children playing a song called Taco Rocco. It's so, just kind of being aware of that, those kinds of things. The lyrics, that with those folk songs, American folk songs, that's where we run into a lot of that. So just kind of taking our teachers through that checklist. And then the last step is seeking that new music, and found some great resources here that our teachers can use to find composers and arrangers of different cultures, different genders, representing female composers also, because we are underrepresented in this field also. So that's just a little background on what we're working on and where we are. It's a topic that I'm really interested in working on, so if there are ever any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate that. And then we're going to bring it home here with staff support and diversifying our workforce, and handing that over to LaToya Harrington.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so a little bit of the work that we are doing in and around diversifying our workforce. Obviously, it is top of importance for me to be increasing the footprint and the number of teachers of color that we have within our district. But while looking at our hiring, we also really want to be diving in deep and looking at our retention. So we've had quite a few meetings with our employees of color and inviting them to understand what it looks like to be a district employee, what supports we can provide to them. Do they feel valued, safe, supported in the workspace? Different things that we can do as far as networking events. That's challenging in a COVID era. So a lot of it is plotting and planning for what things will look like down the road. But there are some things that we can do virtually. One of those things is a newsletter that we're excited to roll out this month. Employees work together to vote on what a logo would look like, what the name of the group newsletter will be, and the content will be varied in celebrating some of our staff of color. You've seen a little bit of that in our district newsletter, probably here most recently this month. So excited to really duplicate that in an ongoing newsletter, specifically to our staff of color that's open to anyone to view. Our hiring season is kicking off actually now. We have started to participate in some online virtual recruiting events. In the past, those would be things that we could travel to, but obviously in COVID era, that's a little bit challenging. We are excited to report that of the college recruiting events that we'll be attending, 20% of those are HBCUs, so colleges specifically for students of color. So really looking forward to making that important, and hopefully hiring some students and staff of color to join. We'll be collaborating HR with OLL in many different ways, looking at our hiring practices, looking at our job descriptions. Are they inviting? What training opportunities that we can have, and how we can just work together as a leadership group and human resources and recruiting. And excited to update in July. All of this work and all of these fruits come to blossom later on in the summer, and we see what our hiring efforts look like in new staff to join the district.
Thank you, LaToya. And just a final wrap up here of that. I think you know that we continue to collaborate with NAACP, but every 4 to 6 weeks we meet and update on practices and what our community needs are. We continue with our family engagement work. Later this spring, there'll be a deeper presentation on that family engagement work. We have found some strategies that have helped us in this arena as well. And so the community and parent voices that were elevated through last summer's work certainly were pronounced and impacted a lot of what you've already heard tonight. So thank you to our presenters. And now we would just open it up to the board for questions and feedback to any one who presented tonight.
Thank you so much to everybody that presented. I'll turn it over to my fellow board members if there's any questions.
I have some questions. First of all, I want to just express appreciation for the depth and sensitivity that this issue is being investigated and worked on by students, teachers, administrators. I think it's amazing, and I think it's time. I think it's past time. So I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad that we're on this journey. I do have a question about, so I have a few questions. I'm wondering, Superintendent Bush, if the IDI or the intercultural development inventory could be made available for board members. I think that might be something that would be interesting for us to participate in and see how it influences our work. Also, I was wondering, LaToya, you had mentioned networking events, and I'm wondering, and also working with the Office of Learning and Leadership. So I'm wondering if the networking events, if those are kind of being towards developing an employee group. And then I wanted to know what work was being done with OLL.
Yeah, so our equity team has pronounced that as being one of the kind of 4 big things that we want to tackle right away. And those are employee resource groups, or ERGs. And we'd like to start with one for our staff of color in hopes of down the road creating more ERGs across the district for other groups that might feel marginalized or underrepresented. So yeah, that's that. Thank you for bringing that up. And I'm sorry, I think there was more to your question.
Oh, that's great. No, the other question was, I'm curious, like what work you're doing with OLL.
Is Deputy Superintendent Quaker still on? I don't think so.
I don't think she is. I think we might have dropped her off.
So I'll just make a brief comment here that there, well, LaToya just referred to it, there is an equity team that is really analyzing everything that we are doing as a district through the Office of Learning and Leadership. And then there will be a plan that will be, and they're part of a national consortium around this work. And then we will have an enhanced plan that's aligned to our strategic plan already of what needs to be elevated and how do we need to just get better at getting better around our equity work. So that plan we certainly can share with the board, but that will probably not be till the summer when they're through that whole process. And there are lots of folks around that table on our equity team, and that is led through the Office of Learning and Leadership.
That's awesome, awesome work. I guess I do have one final question about retention and HCBUs. I think in the past, we've had some issues retaining employees that are coming out of HCBUs simply because it is cold in Iowa. It is so cold in Iowa. And we traditionally have employees that come from HCBU, sorry, is historically college, historic colored Black universities.
Black College University.
That will be here a year, maybe 2, and then it's just too cold. There's southern schools and southern located, and then they just can't take the cold. So I'm kind of wondering what we're doing about that issue. I mean, how are we keeping retention when we can't control the weather?
Yeah, so we're working on controlling the weather. That's our top priority. But until we figure that out, the HBCUs that we are really targeting, Harris Stowe, Lincoln University, those are Midwest HBCUs. So we recognize that that's not just school district specific. That's any employer that's in recruiting to Iowa. We know that it's got to be someone who's used to this weather. Another thing that Tanya and I, and it's probably a little premature for me to introduce this, but we really want to be looking at targeting for our student teaching. We think that that will be really important to be working with some HBCUs to capture folks during their student teaching experience to get them to Iowa, so that way they can really see if you can bear through the weather, it really is a great place to live, and this is a great district to work in. So we want to work through some of those barriers that make it a little bit easier to get someone during their student teaching experience. So yeah, so that long response. While we're targeting many different HBCUs, we certainly are doing those in the Midwest for those reasons.
Perfect. Makes great sense. Thank you so much.
Questions from other board members?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First, you mentioned the equity team. Can we get a bit of an update as to the composition of that equity team? Like what parts of the district are represented on that team?
So this was part of actually the organization, the National Superintendent's Organization, and it was intended last summer as a consortium of district leaders to really think about how are you auditing your entire system from a leadership perspective in order to create and develop an implementation plan that would invite a larger, broader voice. So right now, it is a district leadership team that includes LaToya Harrington, Nicole Quaker, members of our Culture Climate Transformation team, and some of our executive directors. So it's a pretty small team, but actually it was a head count that was part of that national consortium. I think there was only a total of 6 to 8 that were allowed on the team. And then after the audit is done from a leadership perspective, then it's how are you implementing this with the alignment of the rest of your work. So it's kind of an audit team and then a planning team to then implement in alignment with our strategic planning work.
Okay, thanks.
It's led by Deputy Superintendent Quaker.
Okay, thanks for that information. I do have a question for Zabaho and Nakasa. You guys both mentioned the 1619 project, and I hope you're still on here with us. And because the 1619 project seems to be like hanging in the balance based on legislation that's pending in Des Moines, I'm just wondering if you're advocating in Des Moines and if you need help, because I would be more than happy to help you with that, because that's what I do every day. And if you are interested in having some assistance with that, maybe Superintendent Bush can connect us. You just let her know and she'll pass it on to me. But you guys are doing awesome work.
Thank you. And thank you, first off, for even acknowledging the bill. I was very, very happy to hear you acknowledge that bill, and just seeing what the legislation is trying to do with our district. It makes me very happy to know that you guys are caring, especially about the 1619 project. I won't speak for Nzabo, but I think we're on the same page when we say we would gladly accept your help, and I can't wait for further correspondence.
Okay, cool. If Superintendent Bush could connect us, we will get started on that.
Excellent. And then Jen, did you also have a question?
Well, my question was for Nakasa and Zabaho. When's that video coming out that you talked about? I think you said it's Wednesday, but where would we find that as school board members?
If I can chime in. I'm so sorry. I will let you guys answer. I don't want to overpromise that it will be ready Wednesday. I just want to put that out there. They are working on the edits. We did film. We made sure that there was participation at all of our high schools. And then we wanted folks that weren't in a high school to be able to film. And then we filmed at the district. So Justin Schaefer in Communications, another shout out to Communications. And they are just world class. But sorry, Justin is combining all of that footage together, and it takes a little bit of time. So we will get it out by the end of the week, but it may not be Wednesday. And the way that you can see that, it'll be emailed to admins at all the high school level. It'll be on our district website, and there'll be other means that it'll be shared. But those are certainly ways, and we'll make sure that the board gets it also. Sorry, Nakasa, didn't mean.
And it'll be featured in our Friday's Future Ready Today newsletter that goes out to about 22,000 email addresses. So we're really excited to have it featured in there too.
I'm excited to see it. Thank you so much for your presentations tonight.
Awesome. Any other board members? I just want to comment. I appreciate the presentation. I love hearing from students. So please, more student voices at the board table. Always welcome. Just shine a bright light on what's happening in this community. And I'm so proud to have you in this district. So it sounds like there's just tons of progress being made, which is great. I know that there's lots of work to do, and we definitely don't want to slow down. So just appreciate everybody's effort in kind of moving us forward as fast as we can responsibly. Next up is a presentation regarding school naming, the school naming committee's recommendation for new elementary schools at Coolidge and Jackson sites. Let's turn the meeting over to Eric Christensen to learn more about the process, the recommendation, and the unveiling.
Oh, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Vice President Tominski and the board. It is with great excitement that we bring to you tonight 2 new school name recommendations. Joining me tonight is Greg O'Connell, who is currently the principal at Coolidge Elementary, Tammy Kuba, who's currently over at Truman Elementary as a principal, and finally Nick Duffy, the principal at Jackson Elementary. Really proud of this team and the efforts that they've demonstrated over the last months as we've gone down this road. It's really through a strong collaborative effort between these school communities, along with our community at large, that we present to you the 2 recommended school names for consideration this evening. We're going to tag team this presentation, and because Greg, Tammy, and Nick have all had important roles in this process. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Greg O'Connell, the principal over at Coolidge, who will share with all of us the goals and the naming process. Greg?
Thanks, Eric. All right, so one of the first things as we were taking a look at this process, and it certainly was something that took quite a bit of time, was to make sure that we were getting input from our students, first and foremost, and then our staff, and then our families, and then hence the community. One of the things we were trying to look at was to see if the name could then also be somewhat aligned to our architectural design that we had been working on with our designer at OPM. And then we also worked to develop a naming lesson to try to look at how could we ask students to submit some names that would stand the test of time. So we're looking for a name that's going to stick with our building for a number of years. And so we want to make sure that it has some sort of value, and that it also has something that we can look back on and go, okay, that was that point in time or that point in history. Process, we were discussing this in classrooms. Our plan was to do it in person, but in November, that was not an option. So we did travel to classrooms remotely and delivered the lesson, and then we're able to get feedback that way. So we went to those students that are in our buildings in person and to those that were in remote classrooms. Then we also created a Google form for those students and families to submit ideas. And then after getting those ideas, then we took that to our staffs. And then our staffs were taking a look at those ideas and then narrowing that down and adding to that list as well. And then we selected some names from there to provide as our recommendations to the board.
Thank you, Greg. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Tammy. Tammy, Nick, and Greg, very proud of them. They created this the naming lesson for the kids, and I'm so proud that the kids were really involved in this process since it's their school. And so we're going to have Tammy talk a little bit tonight about the naming lesson and the experiences that she had during that time. Tammy?
Good evening. Yes, so Greg, Nick, and I collaborated virtually and around a lesson. We worked through a shell, and then each one of us personalized the lesson for our individual schools. So Greg personalized the lesson for the Coolidge community, Nick personalized the lesson for the Jackson community, and I had to personalize it for both communities. So as we thought about children, we decided to use a children's book. So this book that you'll see on your screen, How Alma and How She Got Her Name, was a book that was selected. And we chose that as a springboard for deeper conversation around the importance of choosing a name for the schools. And so then that sparked a conversation with students. And within our presentation, we shared examples of buildings that are named after influential people, buildings that are named after landmarks, buildings that were named after innovative ideas or natural surroundings. And then Greg already mentioned, but then we shared a form with all of our families, our staff, and our students, and encouraged all of them to have an opportunity to submit their ideas for a name within that lesson. And so then that started that process. And so then we got a first initial pass of the lesson, or of the names. And once that list was generated, and it was quite lengthy, then we began prioritizing and then cutting down the list and then sending it out again for further feedback. So again, like I can't stress, it was a super collaborative effort. I think we had lots of kids and families and staff participate in the process.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. And then finally, I'd like to introduce Mr. Nick Duffy, who's going to talk to us tonight a little bit about the parent and community input that was received during this entire process. So I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, Eric, and good evening, board members. I want to reiterate as we begin here just how collaborative this process was. We did seek input from a number of stakeholders as we work toward reaching our final vote. As you see detailed on the slide, there were 532 total votes cast for the Coolidge site and 887 total votes cast for the Jackson site. The names that emerged really seemed to have a common theme, given that we had experienced a significant natural disaster this summer. In the wake of the derecho and the loss of a high percentage of our community's tree canopy, and given the topography and the park-like settings that surround our buildings, the themes were noted by OPN as they were designing the buildings, incorporating natural elements into the wayfinding and interior signage, as well as really utilizing biophilic design in the learning spaces at both buildings. The connection to the natural world and our resilience as a community was then highlighted by the names that were suggested by our students, our staff, and our community. And as has been shared, it was really a robust and inclusive process through which the names we present to you this evening emerge. So we're excited to share those names with you.
Thank you, Nick. And again, I can't stress enough the collaboration that existed between these three communities. It was fun to be a part of and hear some of the names that surfaced. So we are ready at this point to turn it back over to Principal O'Connell, who would like to share with you the recommended school name. Greg?
So for the new site at Coolidge, our new name will be the West Willow Elementary School. And if you go one more, Noreen, it'll showcase a few children that are currently at our Coolidge building that will be at our new West Willow building.
That is awesome. Thank you, Mr. O'Connell. And Mr. Duffy, how about Jackson Elementary?
Well, the former Jackson Elementary site will be known as Maple Grove Elementary. And you can see one of our future fifth graders there, who I have a particular fondness for because it's my kid. And then also a nice view of the exterior of the new building at the Jackson site, which will be Maple Grove Elementary.
Thank you, Nick. And before we open it up to questions, again, I want to thank Greg, Tammy, and Nick for leading their school communities through this process. I guess what I'm most proud of, again, is that student-centered approach where we really involved the kids and they learned a lot about the naming process. And through Greg and Tammy and Nick's leadership and the entire staff of those three schools, we're very excited to bring this information to you tonight. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Vice President Tomiski and the board for additional questions or comments.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So excited to hear the update. I'll turn it over to my fellow board members to see if they've got any questions. Their silence tells me that they absolutely love it and that you did a phenomenal job. I know I speak on behalf of the entire Board of Education. Love the process, love hearing how you put kids in the middle of this process. People often ask, how do you name these types of things? And what better way to do it than with the people that are going to be inside these buildings every day and know those communities. So hats off to you and the rest of the team for putting together the presentation, for sharing this with us tonight.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the school names and presented by the committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, thank you very much. Before we adjourn tonight's meeting, we have a couple of individuals who we'd like to honor with a moment of silence in recognition of their service to our district. I'll turn the meeting over to Trista Martinac, who is the principal of Harrison Elementary School.
Good evening. I'd like to ask the board to close our meeting in a moment of silence as we recognize the life of Sherry Pilarczyk, our amazing Harrison Building Secretary. Sherry passed away unexpectedly on Monday, January 18th, 2021. She was a graduate of Jefferson High School, graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in communications, and went on to co-own Honey Creek Acres Orchard in Swisher. She began her career with the school district and served as Harrison's media secretary, then the associate principal secretary at Roosevelt, and finally found her calling as the principal secretary at Harrison, where she worked for almost 7 years. Everyone who met Sherry said she was the kindest person they knew. She had a cheerful, happy, sparkly personality and would always put a smile on the faces of those around her. Sherry had an uncanny ability to make a person feel special, cared for, and important, no matter what kind of day she was having. Anyone who entered the Harrison office felt like the most important person to Sherry, regardless of how busy she was. People were drawn to her because of her positive attitude. She couldn't help but look at the bright side of things. She was the ultimate glass half full kind of person. Sherry is survived by her 3 children, daughter Daisy and husband Derek Hanshaw, son Mac and daughter Jamie, brother John and sister Joy, and her dear friends Julie Hamilton, Cynthia Herring, and Bedora Sharonik Papp.
On behalf of the entire board, we'd like to extend our condolences to Sherry's family, and we will continue to keep them in our hearts and prayers. Next, we will be recognizing our fellow board member, Director Gary Anhalt, and his service to this district for many, many years. Cedar Rapids Community School District family, we have suffered several losses in our district's family this year. And our board members have felt deep sympathy for each of those losses. Tonight, we recognize and celebrate the life of our dear friend and fellow colleague, Director Gary Anhalt. Gary became a board member in 2009 after his retirement from his educational career and service to the Cedar Rapids Community School District. As a board member, Gary always brought to the board table his passion to serve students. Many times the question that would come from Director Anhalt would be, but is it best for our kids? He was always present at celebrations, staff recognitions, learning events, graduation ceremonies, and community gatherings, always with a smile on his face and many times filling the room with his laughter. Gary loved celebrating our kids and our district. Moreover, Director Anhalt was the ultimate advocate for educators. For many years, he served as our board member's representative as a delegate and legislative advocate. He served on the Iowa Association of School Boards Board of Directors and was the first to raise his hand to be the voice of Cedar Rapids at the state capitol. His passion to advocate for public education was a gift to our district and our state. Gary's service to our district stretches far beyond that of a board member. We invite members of the CREA family to now share about Gary's life as an educator and CREA leader. Tanya Johnson and I think Tammy Waro have some additional comments.
Gary lived a professional life of purpose, leadership, and commitment, serving the children and families of Cedar Rapids. He had a 40-year career as an educator, teaching students in Cedar Rapids as a PE teacher. Before he retired from teaching in 2009, he was our CREA president for 12 years. He was one of those people that gave me lots of insight into the job that I'm doing today. Now I'd like to pass the mic on to Tammy Waro, his vice president for many years and a dear, dear friend of his as well, with some comments that she would like to share, or maybe I'll be sharing.
I have Gary's wife, and the dog he cared for is like barking, and it wouldn't be a board meeting, a Gary board meeting, if I don't make it last a while longer, guys. So just on Gary's behalf, get ready. So I'm going to go a little bit different path and talk to you about Gary and his leadership. So Gary was an outstanding educator, boardsman, activist, community member, and we know that we've lost an incredible advocate for students, but most importantly, we've lost a beloved friend and family member. Gary saw each and every one of us as the best possible version of ourselves and pushed all of us to do better for our students and society. And I see so many people on this today, Eric and Nick and Tanya, if I kept making it the screen bigger, that I know how proud he would be, the leadership that has become. And you'll hear this in what I'm saying tonight, because I'm not here to tell stories about the past. His educational past stories would take a week of board meetings, but I'm here to ensure everyone understands what a great leader Gary was and was allowed to be because of the administrative support of the Cedar Rapids Community School District, and therefore how many other great leaders were developed because of this. Gary was one of the first official teacher leaders in our district. Ken Freeman, the CREA president predecessor, would probably be the first official teacher leader in Cedar Rapids. Gary became the phase 3 coordinator. And I believe this history is extremely important because when we lost Gary so suddenly, we lost a large piece of history just as suddenly, without not a lot of us left behind to share or to understand what brought Cedar Rapids to a place where we are today. Much of the work that Gary did as phase 3 coordinator and as president of the Cedar Rapids Education Association set up the district to be a lighthouse district that others from all across the country tried to emulate. Phase 3 is probably a term that many people don't know anymore, and that's fine, but it was really one of the original teacher leader funds that we could access. It was a way to get better at our craft or have projects we wanted to try with our students. And as the president of CREA, that was one of Gary's roles. It's important now because it's a part of our district history that I'm afraid is going to be lost. Because at the same time, a grant was received by a trifecta that was built between the NEA and the local association and the school district. And they created the position in the 90s that ensured the CREA president, the president of the second largest local in the state, because Des Moines already had this type of position, was released to do the business of helping teachers' voices be part of the district's everyday decisions. The common agreement was that teachers were, and still are, the ones who are closest to our kids. And this was Gary's heart, as many of you noticed at every board meeting when he would try to share his heart about kids and teachers. It came from a long history of that being his job and his career. Superintendent Finch was on the cutting edge with that work, and Gary sat on the cabinet, the inner circle. Gary, as an educator, was trusted enough to carry the district emergency phone. Laurel would call Gary if it was his weekend or evening to have it. Because of his deep responsibility, Gary was paid a salary, that of a new principal. The thought process was if you're not paid at the same level, you don't get looked at in the same manner, that your voice might not be as important. It was precedent setting. It was a way for teachers to really feel valued and to have one of their own being able to have an open, honest voice. It clearly wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. And many times I know both sides were frustrated by some of the amazing things that came out of it were important. The grant opportunities for the district. Together, the Stanley Amendment, which would have put further limits on the ability of school districts to budget and spend money, was defeated because Gary could rally hundreds of educators and they in turn could rally parents, all working in the same direction. So important things for our community was taken care of. When tragedy struck with the flood of 2008, Gary was in the heart of the work every day as an integral part of the executive office work with FEMA. He helped work through the building of the ELSC, and it was there. He was there to take the burden for the district with staff concerns, staff being mad about things, and at a very turbulent time that was important to the district. There's a lot more history I'd be happy to share talk with any of you about. I share this because I implore not only our board members, but all of our administrators to understand we've lost a voice for students and staff, but for our teachers in particular. That voice is going to be missed. And as board members, you're going to have to find ways for every one of you to hear the voice Gary brought and how he went out regularly to access and to understand what's happening in our schools. I'm sure it was annoying many times, and I'm sure you were often trying to figure out what he was trying to say, because I know Gary struggled with finding ways to have his brain say what his heart was feeling. And I know he was frustrated by the inability to speak one's heart on a board where your hands are very much tied about what you can say and when you can say it. But I encourage you all to try and find ways to do that and find ways to remember that our kids and our teachers need you to know what's happening without filters, without screens, just what's real. It's a good thing. You see, we lost a champion who had been in the trenches with us, who had risen to the highest teacher leader you could be in our district, and then who continued to share that knowledge on our school board. I'm going to end with a piece of modern history that Gary was very, very proud to be a part of. Honestly, he couldn't wait to tell me this news because he knew how important it was going to be to a profession that's predominantly made up of female teachers, while education administration is predominantly made up of men. The fact that our district finally hired a female superintendent, not on an interim, but as our superintendent, he was very proud, not only of the accomplishment, but that it was someone he personally trusted and that he knew as an association leader that she was a true advocate for students and staff. I leave thanking you for letting me take this time, precious time tonight that you should be with your families. But I implore you to always remember Gary's heart and ask those questions that he probably would have asked and annoyed everyone. Thank you so much.
On behalf of the entire board, we'd like to extend our condolences to Gary's family as we continue to keep them in our hearts and prayers. And as we observe the moments of silence, the board is thankful for both Sherry and Gary and their contributions and unending passion to Cedar Rapids schools, with a deep understanding that they both made a significant difference in the lives of our children, staff, and families. At this time, we call for a moment of silence for both Sherry and Gary. With no further business, we stand adjourned. Thank you. Board members, please stay on for our exempt session.